This charm bracelet was created during a art retreat here at Nunn Design, and for this tutorial I wanted to show you how you can make a mold and use crystal clay and Jacquard PearlEx Powders to create this type of look. The project will be slightly different, but it'll give you an idea of how you can do this. For the bezel, we'll want to use a little bit of rubbing alcohol to clean the bezel fully before we put the crystal clay in it. Bezels are cast lead-free pewter, and then they're oxidized after they've been electroplated. So we electroplate with a 0.999 silver, and then we oxidize it to give it this aged look. This oxidization is absorbed into the plating, but there's a little bit on the surface, and this helps remove that oxidization. This also removes any oils and dirt that might be on the bezel and makes it nice and clean. So go ahead and clean thoroughly your bezel before you put the clay in it. To make a silicone mold, you'll need this easy mold silicone putty. It comes in a part A and part B. You'll open up these and pinch off equal size balls of the putty for you to make your mold with. You'll also need to have some sort of either a charm. I'm going to be using this charm from the Nunn Design line, or you can use a vintage button or any kind of found object such as a fossil or things that you've made. Before I mix up the putty, I'm going to get this prepared. I'm going to trim off this little extra loop right down here using a pair of flush cutters, and then I'll be able to sink this easily into the mold. So to remove that, and I actually want to keep it a nice sharp point, so I'll come in and first remove it this way, this little loop, and then remove it over here so I can still have a nice point here. Other things that I'm going to need to do is take a little bit of olive oil or baby oil. I just have a little bit in a dish, and I just put some onto a Q-tip, and I'm going to just smear it around onto the item that I'm going to be embedding into the putty, just to make sure that it can easily release. Let's first make our silicone mold. And I like to lay a piece of plastic down onto my work surface so this doesn't stick onto the paper. And now that I'm all ready, I am going to start mixing the putty as quickly as I can. I have found that I like to use the tips of my fingers like this because I have tried all kinds of different techniques of rolling it in my palms, doing whatnot, and I find that kneading it with the fingertips is the best way to move quickly and to blend these two parts together. When you're not seeing any modeling showing up, so no streaks of white coming through, go ahead and roll the putty into a ball. Navigating just the right amount of putty is going to take some time to figure out like how much to use, so you might have a bigger patty than you need. And then place that crease. I'm looking for any area that doesn't have a lot of creases right on that surface area. And now I'm going to press down using this little bowl until I have still a fairly thick patty. See how thick that still is? And then I peel that off. You can either flip that over and use this side, you know, depending on whatever looks like it's going to be the smoothest. Go back. All right, so now that I have my putty patty, say that 10 times fast, you press the item that you want to have the impression down into the mold until it's down in there. You're not going to want to go all the way down and bottom out to the bottom. You just want to go far enough down. Crystal clay is a 2-part epoxy clay that air dries. You have a 90 to 120 minutes to work with this before it sets up and is firm like cement. You can embed in it, you can sculpt in it, you can do all kinds of fun things. When you open up the kit, this is the 50 gram pack. We'll take out the different parts, and you'll find 50 grams of the clay. I'm working with the black, so it has the part A and the part B, and it also comes with a pair of gloves. You'll want to wear your gloves when it is in the two parts. This hardener is the resin epoxy, and it's a good idea to be wearing gloves when you're working with this when it's in the raw form. Once it's been activated, the two parts have mixed. It is now neutral, and you can take off your gloves. But for this first step, we're going to go ahead and put the gloves on. I like to put a little bit of baby powder on my hands prior to putting them in the gloves. It keeps my hands nice and dry, and so it's easier for me to get the gloves on and off. Once you have your gloves on, I also like to lay down a piece of plastic on my work surface so I can put the clay on so it doesn't stick to my paper. You want to open up part A and part B and pinch off a ball size to work with. Once you have your part A and part B and you have equal size balls, or pretty darn close to being equal size, you'll want to mix the two parts together until they're fully blended. So these gloves are very large for my hand, and I typically use a latex glove that is more my size, but these are the ones that are in the package, and they are very handy to have on the ready. Use a wet wipe to wipe down your gloves after you have blended the two parts together. This will help you reuse your gloves over and over again between projects. And to remove them, just pull on the fingertips, and the gloves will usually slide off and not be inside out, so it makes it easy to reuse these again and again. I use a wet wipe to wipe down my hands to remove any of the baby powder that might be on my hands from the gloves. Now my clay is blended together and it's activated, and I can go ahead and use it on my next project. When you're finished with the crystal clay, you can go ahead and close up the package and seal it as tight as you can, removing any of the excess air. I like to seal up and keep in a separate bag. So I keep the A inside here, and then the B is completely in its own bag. So there's not any risk whatsoever of these two getting activated. So I put the two in, pull out any excess air, and seal it up. I've mixed a ball of crystal clay. I've pinched off 2 equal sized balls and blended it together fully, and now I'm ready to put it inside of the bezel. And then I will make an impression using the mold. So pinch off a small ball and place it into the bezel. And I have to tell you that this is going to be trial and error, because you might have too much, you might not have enough. I'm going to have this be slightly domed in the center for a nice impression. I'm bringing the clay over to that edge and kind of pushing it up into that inside edge over here. And then I'll turn around and do this side. Let me zoom in here for you to see this a little bit more. So I have some clay on my fingers, as you're seeing, and it's getting on the bezel. So it's a good idea to take a moment every now and then and just wipe your fingers off to make sure that you're not touching that side edge. It just gives it more for you to clean up. So I'm bringing this up into this edge. And then I'm just double checking to see that I have the clay fully adhered, and then I don't have any gaps along these side edges. You can see that that's the gap that I was looking for. Do you see this right over in here, in this area right here? Just use my finger to push that up. once I have my clay inside of my bezel, this clay is pretty sticky. I just mixed it, and it's nice if you let this sit for 10 to even 15 minutes. When it's really saturated with ink, like that black, it is stickier than like the white or the brown. Alright, so we have now a mold, and we're ready to make the impression. What makes this so cool is I used a combination of silver and gold on that black. So let me show you how to do that. So I have a little bit of silver and gold of the PearlEx, the Jacquard PearlEx Powders, that I'm going to use a Q-tip and place a little bit of this onto my mold, and then I will make an impression with it. And you'll just put your toothpick in, or your Q-tip in, and just get it so it has a little bit of the PearlEx powders on it, and just kind of smear it around randomly. We'll just see how this looks. I don't really know. It'll be fun to see. A little down in there maybe. And then I'm going to come in with my gold, use the other end, smear some of that in there. Back on both of the containers. Put a piece of Ziploc bag onto my work surface and just kind of tap off any excess of that PearlEx powder that might be on there. And I'm ready to try out my impression. So I'm thinking I kind of want it to be like a sunset like that, or sunrise. I placed my bezel down on there, and now I'm pressing up from the back of the mold and down. And let's see how we did. And there is our very fun PearlEx impression. So I can go in along this edge right here and clean this up slightly. I like how it comes over the side edges like that, so I don't usually clean those up. So for cleaning this up, you can use a wet wipe and come on in, and either use, if you have a fingernail, go along that edge and clean up that side there, or you can put a toothpick underneath this wet wipe and just go along there. Now you can let that cure. It'll take 12 to 12 hours until it's hard, but it continues to cure for up to 72 hours. After you're done making your impression with your mold, use a wet wipe, or if it's gotten down inside of there, just go ahead and run it under the sink with some little bit of soap and water, and it'll just clean up. And then you'll have your mold clean for the next time.